want to start off by telling you about what I think is one of my greatest qualities, but also one of my greatest flaws. Is that okay? Sometimes our greatest qualities are our greatest flaws, aren't they? And for me, one of what I think is one of my greatest qualities is I can make quick decisions. I'm really good in a crisis because I am decisive. I can make rapid fire decisions. I can move ahead with things. And I happen to think that that's a quality. However, at times it can be a flaw because where I can be decisive, I can also be reckless. Now, do you think it's safe enough for me to tell you a little bit about one time in my life where I actually was reckless? Could I share this with you today? All right. Don't judge me. You probably will. In 2019, I took my family to Bali. We went for a holiday and we were there for a couple of weeks together. And while we were at the shopping center one day, these people approached us and they had like a lucky dip, kind of a box, whatever you call it. So we picked our lucky dip out and had a look at what was inside the envelope. And we'd won this prize. And the prize, we got to choose whether it was going to be like a brand new GoPro or a voucher for accommodation, or there's a third option, but they looked amazing. And I'm going, I would love a GoPro. Like, if you're going to give me a free GoPro, I will take this. So the person with the basket said, yep, no worries. You've got the prize. We just need to come down to the hotel that we represent and come to the foyer and you can pick up the prize anytime you want. And they said, you can come anytime this week. Just come find us when you're ready. But then they go, oh, but actually, if you want to come with us, we're going there now. Like, did you want to come with us? And I thought, you know what? I'm on holidays. I don't have much on. We're hanging out as a family. We thought, let's just stop by the hotel and pick up our prize. Ooh. So we go out of the shopping mall, and it just so happened that they had a taxi ready for us. And so we thought, well, we'll just hop in the taxi with these people. Now, you can see where this is going, right? I didn't stop. I thought of it as I hopped in the taxi to be like, it's actually an unmarked vehicle. Like, it's not a licensed taxi. I'm just hopping in this car with this stranger. But of course, I made a rapid fire decision. So I put my wife and my two little vulnerable children in the car with people that I don't know. And off we went. They said it'll just be a few minutes till we get to the hotel. So we're just driving through the markets. And then we get on the freeway and we're driving out of the city that we're staying in. And suddenly I'm panicking because I'm going, unmarked vehicles, strangers, I'm on a highway. And everything these guys have said to me turns out to be a lie, because it started off as a guaranteed prize. And then it was, well, you may get a prize. And the story developed as we went. Anyways, I was panicking and I'm praying at this point going, God, get me out of this situation because I've made a bad decision. I don't know who I'm in the car with. And in full transparency, I picked up my backpack and I'm rummaging through going, I need a weapon or something. I'm thinking, how do I go all Liam Neeson on these guys if things go wrong? All I had was my house keys. So I held on to those just for a good measure. Anyways, we pulled up and I'm thinking, if I don't see a hotel, I'm going to go ballistic here, right? But there was a hotel and we pulled in. But of course, there was a presentation that had to happen before our prize. And it turned out we'd been ushered into a timeshare scheme. And so we got this timeshare scheme presentation and they're like, it'll just take a few minutes. And after 30 minutes or so, my kids are losing it. Like, they're melting down and crying. There's no food. I'm angry and I'm flustered. And I tell you what, I lost it at this guy. Like, I completely lost it. I don't normally lose it. I lost it in that moment, being like, you have lied to me. You have deceived me. You've wasted my family time. Get me out of here. Now, granted, they gave me a prize. They gave me 7 days of free accommodation, but I was so put off by them. I didn't touch that thing. Now, why am I telling you this story? Well, I'm telling you this story because I want you to hear that sometimes my decisions don't always lead me to where I think they're going to go. In that moment, I can look back now and say that was probably not my best decision. Would you agree that probably wasn't my best decision? Not how I really wanted to spend my holidays. But as my life keeps revealing to me, my decisions aren't always the best decisions. I like to think in the moment that my decisions are the best decisions, but they're not always the best decisions. And by extension, we'll bring this up on the screen, by extension, I suspect that for you, that not all of your decisions have been your best decisions. But here is something that I think is true for all of us here. We all want to make great decisions, don't we? We all want to make great decisions that we can look back on in life. We can look back without regret and say, in that moment, in that time, I made the best possible decision available to me. None of us want to live with regret looking back at the choices that we've made. So if we all want to make great decisions, but we know that our decisions aren't always the best decisions, how do we make great choices? How do we make great choices about our families, our careers, our love lives, our finances? I mean, whatever it is on your list. How do we make great decisions about these things? Now, for some of you here, you're probably thinking, all right, I know where this is going. I'm in a church. It's a preacher who's talking to me. So the answer has got to be God. What do you reckon? If you're thinking that, yes, Lisa, you're on the money. The answer will be God. But the problem is some of you think about that this morning. You think, well, hold on, involving God in my decisions, does that just make me a robot? Like, does God just want to control all of my decisions? Am I just resigning myself to a life of saying yes, dear, to God instead of my wife? Like, what does that even look like? And I think so often when we talk about involving God in our decisions, we can talk about it in a way that makes people feel like robots, like God is trying to take away their freedom. But what I want to say to you this morning is God doesn't want something from you in this regard. He has something for you. He doesn't want to take freedom. I actually think he wants to offer you wisdom. God, as our heavenly Father, wants to offer you wisdom. And that's what I want to speak to you about this morning. The wisdom that is available to you when you need to make decisions in life. And so what we're going to do now is we're going to look at the story of Nehemiah, because Nehemiah is a man who made incredible decisions. He involved God in his decision making. We see it all throughout the story of Nehemiah. And today I want to show you a story that is a really important turning point in the book of Nehemiah. Now, who can remember back to the very first week of Nehemiah? Was anyone here for the first week? We talked about the burden that God placed on Nehemiah's heart. Do you remember that? God placed a burden for him to rebuild the walls and the gates of Jerusalem. So if you don't know much about Nehemiah, he lived in Persia. He traveled all the way to Jerusalem to rebuild the walls and the gates. And in today's story, we're going to see that what Nehemiah set out to do was actually finished. It was completed. He was done. But the thing is, we're only halfway through the book of Nehemiah. So what happens now? So let's look at this together. Nehemiah chapter 7, we'll start with verses 1 to 3, and then we'll stop and discuss. It says, after the wall was finished, and I had set up the doors and the gates, the gatekeepers, singers, and Levites were appointed. I gave the responsibility of governing Jerusalem to my brother Hanani, along with Hananiah, the commander of the fortress, for he was a faithful man who feared God more than most. I said to them, do not leave the gates open during the hottest part of the day. And even while the gatekeepers are on duty, have them shut and bar the doors. Appoint residents of Jerusalem to act as guards, everyone on a regular watch. And some will serve at sentry posts, and some in front of their house or their own homes. Let's stop there. Now you might be thinking, it's a lot of strange details. What's this all about? Well, we see Nehemiah doing a couple of different things in this passage. The first thing we see him doing is he's appointing brand new staff, right? So you see him here appointing gatekeepers, singers, Levites. These are staffed roles in their society. These are employment opportunities. So he's appointing new staff to ensure that everything is going to function correctly. And actually, sorry, I missed a step. I highlighted it, but the wall and the door, the gates here are finished. So he's done what he set out to do. The gates are finished. He's appointing new staff. But then he goes on and he appoints new leadership. He says to his brother Hananiah, you can start governing Jerusalem. And he says to Hananiah, you can be the fortress, the commander in this place. You're a great man of God. So he appoints new staff. He appoints new leadership. And then he gives them some standing orders. He says, keep the gates closed at these times. Make sure you roster these people in this way. Think about this, that, and whatever. So he gives them these standing orders or these instructions. Now, what does this mean? If I'm looking at this story, it looks to me like Nehemiah is packing up and getting ready to go. I mean, it would make sense, right? I mean, what he set out to do has been finished. He did the walls, he did the gates, he's appointing all these new people, setting things up so that he can step away. Because remember, he did say to the king of Persia that he would return back to the king's service. And so it seems to me like Nehemiah is getting things ready to take a step back. But this isn't what happened. God intervened. And this is what we see. So let's read verses 4 and 5. It says, at that time, the city was large and spacious, but the population was small, and none of the houses had been rebuilt. So listen to this. So my God gave me the idea. My God gave me the idea to call together all the nobles and leaders of the city, along with the ordinary citizens, for registration. We'll stop there. So what do we see here? Well, Nehemiah now has another burden on his heart. His first burden was the walls and the gates. God had spoken to him through this method. And now he starts to notice something about the city. He's just built this incredible wall to protect the city. And he notices that nobody is living in the city. Everybody has come, they've worked together to build this thing, and then they've gone, I'm done. And they've all gone back to their farms, their places that live outside of the city. And now he's looking around going, this is a little bit like a ghost town. And so he has this burden on his heart. He says, God gave me an idea. God gave me an idea. And it's not the first time that God has worked this way. So I think Nehemiah is used to cluing in to the burdens that God places on his mind. So Nehemiah has a conversation with God. Now, he doesn't list it here. We don't see any section in this passage where it says Nehemiah went and prayed. And we don't see any conversation and dialogue between him and God. But we know it happened because he says that God gave me an idea. And how could God give Nehemiah an idea unless he had spent some time with God, unless he had consulted with God? All the way through the book of Nehemiah, we have seen this tendency in his life to pray when things got difficult, to stop and be with God when he wasn't sure about what to do. And so we know that this was part of who Nehemiah was. So he has this conversation with God, and God gives him an idea. So why is this idea so significant? Well, this idea clearly changes Nehemiah's plans, because when you read the rest of the book of Nehemiah, you will not find Hanani listed as governor or governing anywhere. I went through and checked every chapter this week. He gives Hananiah this responsibility in one chapter and then plucks it back basically straight away. It's like he was planning to leave and then decided, actually, change of plan, I need to stay here. So it changes Nehemiah's plan, this idea. This idea was clearly better than his own plan, because he didn't say, hey guys, I have an idea. He said, hey guys, God has given me an idea. He doesn't take credit for the idea, but clearly it's better than any plan that he would have had. But this idea instigates a fresh sense of purpose in Nehemiah's life. Why? Because this chapter represents now a turning point in this book. Because no longer is Nehemiah convicted about building a wall. He is now convicted about building a people who will honor God, who will follow his ways. It's this entire transition from a practical calling to a deeper spiritual calling now. And so he calls the people for registration. In other words, he gives them a reason to come back in the city. I think he's being a bit cheeky here. I think he's going, guys, I want to get you all back inside the walls. I want to fill up this city. And in doing so, in the coming chapters, he starts making plans to have them relocate and live inside the city. And so he begins building a united people that will honor and serve God. And so Nehemiah goes on to experience a deeper sense of purpose, the next step in his part in God's plan, all because God gave him an idea. God gave him an idea. Can you imagine if Nehemiah didn't pay attention to this idea? If he just went back and retired back in Persia, he built the wall. Hey, God, I did what you asked me to do. He went home and he spent the rest of his days serving the king in Persia. Can you imagine what he would have missed? Because even though we know Nehemiah because of the wall, the impact and legacy that he had was because of what is about to happen now as he rebuilds this nation. Nehemiah, I believe, made a great decision, and it all happened because God gave him an idea. I wonder how many of you here could genuinely say that at some point in your life that God has given you an idea. That God has given you an idea for what to do next, for how to respond, for a decision that you could make in your life. I wonder how many of you here could say that God has given me ideas in my life. You see, most of us go through our lives making choices based on our own ideas, sometimes our quick ideas that we have in the moment when we're in Bali, not thinking about the consequences. So many of us go through our lives making choices based on our own ideas. But we know that our decisions aren't always the best decisions. And we want to make great decisions. And if we're honest, most of us need a fresh idea. How many of you here this morning need a fresh idea in your life for something? Maybe you need a fresh idea about how to restore your marriage. Maybe you need a fresh idea about how to break free from an addiction of some sort. Maybe you need a fresh idea for how to dig your way out of the mess that you have found yourself in. Maybe you need a fresh idea about how to respond to your kids. Maybe you need a fresh idea about how to, take a step forward in your career and your life and your journey. Most of us here, in some way, shape, or form, we need a fresh idea. We need a God idea because really, so many of our ideas aren't working. We've tried our ideas. They fall short. Or for some of us, you might be sitting here going, I don't know what to do. I'm facing a situation and a struggle, and I am fresh out of ideas. I need an idea this morning. I need a God idea. You see, from my own life experience, on many occasions, I have regretted not going to God to run my decisions past Him. Not going to God for advice. I have regretted that many, many times. But I have never once regretted going to God to seek wisdom. There is not a single time that I can think of in my life when I have gone to God to seek discernment for a decision or response, when I've dug into scripture, when I've sought wise counsel. I've never once regretted seeking God's wisdom for a decision in my life. Maybe this morning you need a God idea. Maybe today you need a God breakthrough in whatever situation you're in. And maybe today, like Nehemiah, you want to be able to say, God gave me an idea. And that idea changed my situation, changed my circumstance, changed my future. See, here's what I want to say to you this morning. You have access to the ultimate source of wisdom. And it's not Google, okay? It's not Google. You have access to the ultimate source of wisdom, and it's God. You have access to the Creator God who made the entire universe. And amongst the entire universe, He sees you and He knows you by name. And He wants something for you, not something from you. He wants to give you wisdom rather than take your freedom. You have access to Him. But the problem is, most of us don't access Him. We've got access to God, but most of us, like me, we make quick decisions, rash decisions, reckless decisions. And it's almost as if we had a compass in our pocket, but we didn't know which way true north was. We have access to the resource, but we don't always use it. But what could we do differently? How can we learn from the story of Nehemiah? Well, like Nehemiah, my encouragement for you today is to go to God for guidance and to ask Him a simple but a powerful question. And that question is this: God, do you have any ideas? God, do you have any ideas? To meet with God, to come before Him in prayer, to meet with Him regularly and say, God, have you got any ideas for my situation, for what I'm going through? Do you have any ideas how I can turn this relationship around? Do you have any ideas about what I can do to move forward because I am stuck and I can't see what to do next? God, do you have any ideas? I want you to imagine that you're having a brainstorming session with God. When you sit and you pray with Him and be like, all right, God, it's you and me at the table. Let's talk. Do you have any ideas about what we can do in this situation? And create space in your life to access that ultimate source of wisdom. You see, I wonder how your life would be different if you started to go to God for guidance when you were making big decisions. How would your life be different if you started to say, God, do you have any ideas for me? Maybe, just maybe, your decisions might start to change. Maybe, just maybe, you're going to have wisdom that you didn't otherwise have access to. Maybe you're going to walk away with more confidence, feeling like God has revealed His plan. God has given you an idea. God can give you ideas. God can give you wisdom. God can speak to you. God can intervene in whatever situation you are facing, because you have access to the ultimate source of wisdom, the ultimate guidance system, and you can tap into Him anytime, any place, in any situation. He is available to you. But of course, we often forget this, don't we? We get busy and life Stress rises high, things are happening, we're trying to navigate all the different decisions. And we forget that we have access to God. And so this morning I want to give you something and do something to help you remember what you have access to. Judy, can I ask you to hand some of these around? Now, we're going to start. I think we'll have enough for everybody. Try that. I think so. We've got about 90 or so of them in there. We've got compasses here, but what I want everybody to do is if you have a smart device, a smartphone or a smart watch, pull it out, because some of you have a compass app on your smart device. Now, I actually didn't realize this. I have a watch with a screen, and it turned out this week that I have a compass on my watch. All this time, I've had a compass on my watch. I've had access to this resource, and I've never actually used it. And this morning, I'm handing out a physical compass, if you want one of those, as a reminder that you actually have access to a resource to guide you in your life. Now, this is a metaphor. I don't think we all need to head in the direction of north this morning, right? That's not the point of this metaphor. But I want you to hold on to this compass, or I want you to save the app on your phone or your watch or whatever you've got. And I want you to keep this before you this week as a reminder of what you have access to. You see, a compass always points towards true north. And God will always point you towards wisdom. God will always point you towards wisdom. And this week, I want to encourage you to grab hold of that resource, to grab hold of your Bible, to grab hold of some time with God and say, God, would you point me in the direction of north in my life? Would you show me true north? Would you show me the way forward? Would you show me what to do? Show me how to respond. I want you to go to God for guidance and say, God, have you got an idea for me? Now, what are some ways you can do this? Well, here's some handy tricks. You might want to set a timer on your phone that goes off at a certain time of day to remind you to stop and to pray because, hey, life gets busy. Stop and pray in the midst of your day. Ask God for any ideas. You might want to learn to pause before making decisions. This is something that I've been practicing in my life. When someone asks me a question, when I have to make a decision, sometimes I will pause. Sometimes I'll look out the window and think. Other times I'll say, you know what, can I come back to you in an hour with my decision? I've been practicing the art of pausing so I can ask God, hey God, do you have any ideas? You might want to go to Scripture and find some Bible passages that help you navigate the decisions that you're facing in life. You might want to consult with a wise friend who knows God, who walks with him, and can help you discern what to do next. And so as we hand out these compasses, I want you to hold on to that as a bit of a token and a reminder of the resource that you have access to. God can provide you with guidance. He can provide you with wisdom. He can lead you in the way forward. But you and I, we have to learn to go to him. Now, what I want to say, this is Father's Day today, and I just want to take a moment to speak to some of the men in the room. I will be the first to say that we as men can be stubborn. We don't like it when other people tell us what to do. We don't like backseat drivers. We don't like IKEA instruction manuals. We like to do things our way, don't we? But men, here's what I want to say to you as we celebrate Father's Day. You know, the best gift that we can give the people in our lives is actually the wellspring of wisdom that comes from the Lord. The best gift that we can offer our families, our communities, our loved ones, those that we cherish and love, the best gift that we can offer them is to be a wellspring of wisdom that comes directly from God. And so, men, this morning, as we consider Father's Day, as we consider what it means to be men in our society, can I charge you with the responsibility of being men that go to God for guidance? To be men that don't let our pride get in the way of consulting with God, to go to him and say, God, what is your idea for my family? Show it to me. Reveal it to me. God, what is your idea for how I can love the people that you have placed in my life? God, what is your idea of how I can give back to this community? And together as men, I actually think that is one of the best gifts that we can offer this society, to be a wellspring of God's wisdom. So what have we said this morning? We've said we all want to make great decisions, don't we? But we realize the problem is that sometimes our decisions aren't always the best decisions. But you have access to the ultimate source of wisdom. You have access to God. But the problem is most of us don't. We make our own decisions in life. And so what do I want you to do? I want you to go to God for guidance. I want you to ask him for wisdom, just like Nehemiah did. And as you do this, you can stand on a New Testament promise. And so I just want to close now by reading to you James chapter 1, verse 5. And this is what it says. If you need wisdom, ask our generous God, and he will give it to you. If you need wisdom this week, you can ask our generous God. And just like Nehemiah, I actually believe that he can give you an idea. And so if you need that fresh idea this morning, go to God. Go to God for guidance. Look to him and see how he can transform and develop the decisions that you make in your life.